Broadcasting from our station, spinning 3,900 feet above the watery sphere.
I can see for miles and miles. I can see for miles and miles. I can see for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles.
This is Monitor Duty. Hey! Happy Wednesday! Ladies and gentlemen, this is Monitor Duty. This is Reese signing on. And have we got a show for you? Oh my gosh. So, Hutch, at the end of our show last week, Hutch suggested that we read this little book by dork turned Hollywood whatever jobber Patton Oswalt. And so I'm going to let Hutch take it from here because I don't have
all right. I think I was the only one who knew it existed amongst all of us here. This is a book, I want to say this came out around 1999 or somewhere right around there. And I remember that it had taken a while to appear, and they kept working on the title and figuring out what it's called. I don't know if Welcome to the Working Week is a reference to something, if that's a song title or something, but that's Welcome to the Working Week is a JLA book that was written by Patton Oswalt, illustrated by, it's Pat Gleason, right?
Yeah,
and
Patrick Gleason.
You have it in front of you. I don't remember the other artists who contributed to it. So,
let me see here.
But I have some interesting inside stories to tell about this because I have talked to Pat Gleason many times. So, here in the Midwest, and
my theory was right.
okay, the basically the premise of this book is that a kid from Portland, like it is Portland, right? Outside Portland, yes. There's like a specific town. The entire town is beamed up to the satellite while it is being evacuated. In order to evacuate it by the Justice League, because the whole thing is being attacked by aliens. And the only way to deal with it is just get all the people out of there. So they use the teleporters to move everybody up to the watchtower. And did I say satellite? It's on the watchtower on the moon. And so he is one of the narrator is one of the many, many people there. And he sneaks off out of this entire crowd and hides, so that when the invasion is over and they teleport everybody back there, he is hiding on the watchtower. And he proceeds to stay in hiding and sneak around on the watchtower for a week. And we're led to believe there's no security cameras, there's no alerts, there's no, whatever. I guess it's just wide open because they figure they would have, you have to get past the defenses, but once you're in there, you can just go wherever you want. I'm guessing. It's written at a time when we did not have digital cameras everywhere to the point that we can't imagine that happening. Now we can't, but at the time we could buy it. So this kid stays around for a week and he just watches the goings on of the Justice League for a week. The big cases that they do, and also things that they hang around. He watches Green Lantern, Green Arrow, watch a movie.
Bottle episode.
It's a bottle episode. It all takes place on the satellite, and then he gets to come out and have a really cool quip, and then that's it. But it has a payoff that is really cool at the end as to why he was allowed there, because it turns out Martian Manhunter knew he's there the whole time and let him hang out there for a reasons. And I like this story, but it is what it is. It is not the greatest story ever. It is clearly written by a comic book geek who is just bringing in everything. In fact, in one sequence, the Justice League has a party, like a swinging bar party, which everybody in the DCU who would like to hang around in a bar is there.
So that was actually happening on the watchtower?
That is on the watchtower, yes.
Well, and even some people who shouldn't be, because there's like several teenagers. Like,
there's teenagers who are there. There's I Am Bator from the Hitman comic is the bartender. The Bator, the alien. No, he's a demon from hell. That's right.
Yeah.
But why would the League know about him? Yes, he's a DC character, but why would the League know about him? But we brought this up because this is one of the only appearances of the Heckler, who was the person we talked about last week.
Oh.
He and Plastic Man and who else? Ambush Bug, yes. The three of them are bringing barrels of beer for the bar. And because Plastic Man knows monks, because he, of course, was saved by monks when he was rescued after he got his powers. He was shot and he was taken by a monk to recover. That's his origin story. So that's the kind of thing that Patton Oswalt's showing off is, hey, he would have access to beer because he knows monks. So Trappist monks who make good Trappist ale. So that's, it's that kind of thing. If you like that kind of thing, this is a great book. If you don't like that kind of thing, yes.
Welcome to the Working Week. I knew it was familiar somehow. It was a hit song by Elvis Costello.
Aha. Okay. It's exactly the kind of thing that Patton Oswalt would use as a title. Yeah. I have no idea what that's from. I've never heard it, but okay.
You probably have.
It was called The Work Week. It was called, it was The Working Week, and then it was finally Welcome to the Working Week. And I guess they were going back and forth on as they made announcement after announcement that it was coming. The title would always be different. And I take it this was a long time in coming. And by the way, the sequence. This is one of the inside bits that I can tell you. That sequence with all of the DC characters, and it is an amazing page just for the Pat Gleason artwork. You're right. There's teenagers who shouldn't be there. That doesn't make sense. But then again, this is not an official bar, and they can just have it. It's on the moon. It doesn't really have to follow American laws. So there's teenagers there. They just won't serve them.
So
Guy Gardner's in charge of it. What?
Superheroes, they like to give kids beer.
I don't think they give them beer. I don't know, but the maybe it follows the laws of France. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was one of the things that always bothered me about the the identity crisis story is if a crime is committed on the Justice League headquarters, what laws prevail? If there's a rape in the Justice League headquarters, is that American law? Is it?
They just push them right out the.
I would say put them about the airlock, yeah, and that's the end of it. But
besides, we know about half of all laws in the DC universe are just Batman's laws.
That's true, but Batman wouldn't eject somebody out of the airlock anyway. But anyway, we're getting way off the point. The point being, they have a bar party there, and there's teenagers there, but it's a private party, really. So. Why they do it, I think they're setting a trap for Poison Ivy, is I think what they do. Although
I think that is supposed to be what's going on, but it's not really explained well.
It's not totally explained. There you go. That is the 2-page.
That I was confused.
Yeah, there's the 2-page splash, and
we've got here's Courtney. She's 14, so she should totally be here at this discotheque.
Yeah.
Here's JJ Thunder. He's 13, so he should definitely be here.
Yep.
There's Cassandra. She's 16, also totally should be here. There's the body doubles that are here for some reason that they don't explain.
Yeah.
Here's Ted. There's Impulse, right? So he should also totally be here. Unexpectedly, the Star Spangled Kid, who is dead, is here.
The Star Spangled Kid.
Right here. I don't know if it's picking up my with the DJs. I don't know if it's picking up my mouse or not.
Above, I see it above the DJ's head.
Right above the DJ's head.
Okay.
That is Sylvester Pemberton, and that dude's been dead for a long time in this continuity.
And
does that make him old enough?
Well, yeah, he was. Yeah, well, yes, he was. He grew to adulthood, so he was the Star Spangled Kid in the 40s, and then he got displaced in time and then found, and he was an adult at that point. So
his driver's license says born in the 1935, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's
there's also the Inferior 5.
Yeah,
which I also saw. That's there. The blimp's way taller than he ought to be, but that's fine.
Yeah, there's all these characters here, and I asked Pat Gleason about it. I said, that 2-pager has to. I bet that went for a lot of money. And he said his editor asked him for it. So his editor just said, "Can I have it?" And that's kind of a, when your editor asks you, you give him the artwork. And he might have been happy to do it, but I'm like, dang, that's basically robbing Pat Gleason of a huge chunk of change. And when Pat Gleason did the Green Lantern, what is it? The Return of Green Lantern. You remember how Guy Gardner has all the Voldarian stuff stripped out of him, and all these characters are returned, and he becomes a Green Lantern again. Batman's at the Watchtower, and Green Lantern Guy Gardner is outside mooning him. He's got his pants down, pressing his butt against the big glass dome on the Watchtower, and it's a great moment. And I said, I bet that one is like probably also one of your biggest sellers. He says, my editor asked for that one too. I'm like, your editors are just taking all your money. But that's a famous one too. Gleason's a great artist. I do like this. I have no complaints about the art in this, but all of our positives and negatives are basically about the story, and it's going to depend on what you think of Patton Oswalt. So, Matt, what do you think of Patton Oswalt?
I actually disagree with that statement. It is
Okay.
not about whether or not you do or don't like Patton Oswalt.
Okay.
Okay. Because the reasons that I dislike this are the same reasons that I dislike Patton Oswalt. But if anybody would have written this, because here's the honest truth of the matter, I would have written this story 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, right? This is such. I don't know if you saw what I labeled the stream. I called it Gen X Nerd Puke, and that is what this comic is. It is that all that like self-referential, friggin' Kevin Smith, Gilmore Girls, malarkey, right? It's the I gotta flex my nerd cred, it's the desperately like me, guys, like me, I'm one of you. It's all this sad, desperate, cloying late Gen X crap. It's awful because it is a walking cliche. This is the comic book equivalent of the Big Bang Theory, where it's like somebody who's totally out of touch desperately wants to pretend they're still Jenny from the block. They want to appeal to a particular market, and they say, "Look, kids, this is Stranger Things. This is all that kind of Hollywoodized crap." But with all this punchy, proto OMG lol random humor that came up from the millennials, they fed on this kind of stuff, right?
It's like how in Stranger Things, the first episode of the Stranger Things, I think it is, they have the poster from Evil Dead on the wall, and it's just to kind of get cred with the people watching it. But you're like, a teenager wouldn't have seen that. It was rated X when it came out, and it wasn't a hit. It wasn't widely known. It became a success later
in the
on
90s.
video. Yeah, I mean, even in the 80s, it wasn't a success at the beginning of the 80s.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is it's just like you wouldn't like your average schmuck in rural America wouldn't have known about it unless you're from Michigan.
But they're making a reference
Dead.
when you're watching it, and that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, you would have known about that until the 90s. And I know that because I was a schmuck in middle America at the time. And I didn't know about it until the 90s, to the late 90s. It wasn't even until I got back, I dropped out of college that people started talking about Evil Dead. Right. And so that's one of those things so that's one of those things that was just like, but as like the target market for this is one of these things that like, even when we were working on fanzine stuff, like the temptation to pull all of the threads and to put all of the things in there. And like this book falls under one of the things that I can't stand is that it tells you about all of the great stories happening when you're not watching it, because it's not on. You're not telling those stories,
right?
It's just some wannabe Spider Jerusalem who's snuck his way onto the Justice League satellite, just word vomits, the B-roll from Slacker the movie, right? And I'm just like, I'm kind of embarrassed that I was that guy.
It does seem a lot like the kind of stuff we got submitted to Fanzine a lot when we ran a fan run magazine, and that's the good and the bad of fans writing. The sort of, you remember how every month we would get somebody submitting a story where Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne finally have a heart-to-heart talk about how they feel, and it's like, yeah, you can't just have a talkie. This is the entire story is just stay in the mansion talking from beginning to end. You got to have a story. It's why the only good character story that Chuck Dixon ever did was where Robin and Nightwing are having a heart-to-heart talking about what it's like being the sidekick, and the whole time they're riding a train fighting thieves who are on the train, and it's like every shot's an action shot because you got to have action in it. This doesn't have action. It's all
and there's implied action, right? There's lots of implication of action.
Sure.
And so my problem with Patton Oswalt as a media figure is that he puts skin and bones on every negative, like, bad nerd stereotype. Like, if you were ever shoved into a locker, they thought you were Patton Oswalt, right? Like, like that archetype, like, doesn't really exist, except Patton Oswalt makes it exist, right?
Okay.
It's like, oh no, see, I want to shove you in a locker.
Can we give Cartoonicus a chance to talk about Patton Oswalt and the writing?
So I'm going to go off on a limb here and assume that Reese didn't like it.
No, not on balance. there were moments in it that were fine, right? And like the time it came out in, like, it's got, I think, nearly the best costume for Kyle Rayner. I like that look for Kyle Rayner. It was fun to go back and look at it because, like, I was really into like that was like my era for DC. But and Patrick Gleason was just about to land a really, really great Aquaman run. And so, like, that was like, I mean, his art's really cool in this. So I just wish he was drawing something more interesting.
Okay. Anything else, Cartoonicus?
It was a little confusing in the beginning. Once I got into what the main idea was, I do find it, there's an interest factor in the whole concept. That much is clear. I feel like this would actually be potentially a good first comic for someone who knows nothing about the DCU to just be introduced to everything they need to know. Because it was kind of like that, tutorial, a training run. Hey, everybody, here's your cliff notes on all these characters, right? The story itself was a little weird. Not gonna lie, like, wasn't bad. It wasn't particularly good. It just kind of was what it was. But again, it wasn't offensive in any way or anything. I'm just really looking at it more as, like I said, it's this rundown explanation of the DCU, and kind of just not exploring. What's the word? Celebrating. It's like a DC fan celebrating their favorite thing. But I got the impression that, and this is what I was going to say, I have kind of this kind of mild theory here. As I was getting to the end, it almost felt as if this was supposed to be a much bigger 6 to 12 issue story, and somebody tried to pitch it to someone and only got a one shot out of it. So they were having to cram an entire actual story arc into it.
Oh, I actually
Any
thoroughly
chance
disagree with that.
No,
I don't
No.
think so. I think this was his one shot. Yeah.
there were two things that made me think that. Let me see if I can track them down.
No, I think this is intended to be that kind of herky-jerky, incomplete clip show MTV kind of thing. Yeah.
You're referring to the kind of thing where they're watching the monitor womb, all the screens, and on the screens, interesting things are happening, and they're talking to characters elsewhere, talking about events that are going on. And it's like, I'd kind of like to see that event, And
so
the
Cartoonicus is looking that up here.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and give us everybody a quick rundown of the business of the story as it is? And,
okay. Well, I covered the beginning where this kid gets brought up. He's got a weird name. I can't remember the character's name. Is it
Marlis?
Marlis, yeah. It's not.
Is
Marcus,
not.
it's
I don't
Marlis.
think it's a real name.
Okay.
I'm not 100% on that, but I am pretty sure not a real name.
Yeah, he writes a sort of not a student newspaper. It's basically he publishes a what's that?
It's a zine.
He publishes a zine dedicated to the superheroes in a world where superheroes exist. So it's not a comic fan thing; it's a superhero fan thing. There you go. His magazine's called Save Us. Yeah, and so he is like
one solid dollar.
Yeah. And
which, like, honestly, like, that's kind of a cool concept that there'd be like a news zine for people that follow capes, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of makes sense. And like the idea that a guy just puts it together. I mean, we did that, right? So as comic fans. So
yeah,
it kind of, I mean, that part is not one of the things that I was too bothered with. Although I will say that, like, even though the way this is written was so stilted. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm interrupting.
No, and I would say that right around there is one of the first things that really bothered me is that as he's talking about how he wants to be a journalist, he says, I don't want to be one of those meek guys like Clark Kent. I want to be a good crusader like Lois Lane. And I'm like, why would you bring up Clark Kent and Lois Lane if you don't know that that's Superman and, who and his wife? It just, if you don't know, what's that?
Yeah. Because they're famous newsmen in the universe. That's like, but there are others. That would be one of these.
Exactly. You would bring it up.
Like he's an East Coast guy. Those guys aren't national figures.
Right. Right.
I mean, Lois Lane
he's a West Coast guy. They're East Coast. And
right.
Yeah. And you might mention Clark Kent in a list of 5 or 6 journalists, or something, but to just go to those two, it's one of those, I would say that's bad writing right there. An editor should have said, nah, you don't want to mention that. That's just too silly, bring that this guy who doesn't know their IDs is bringing this up, and I do like the opening sequence. I don't really get why he sneaks off. I'm sure lots of people are trying to sneak off and explore the watchtower, and you've got the Flash running around the place, at speed of light. He's collecting every cell phone so that nobody can take a picture, which I don't know why he won't let people take pictures. They're in
those are the cameras, not the picture, not the cell phone.
Oh, cameras. That's right. This is back before camera. Yes, before cell phones. This is digital cameras era. Yeah.
That was one moment that totally went over my head. I did not realize at the time that they were on the watchtower. I thought they were still down on the ground. So I was like, why does he care if they're taking pictures of him?
Right. And they teleported them to the watchtower, to the large womb, and it's everybody in this one town.
Yeah.
Which is just like, I don't know why they would do it that way. That seems weird. And second of all, we've never seen that before. And thirdly, this was a little flash from the past. The dude has a disposable camera, just like one of those paper jobbies that we used to get for going on road trips.
Right.
You know what it made me reminded me of? It was Spider-Man 3. There's a scene at the end where Jameson can't get any photographers around him, so he has to bribe this kid for a disposable camera he's trying to take pictures with.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious.
The storytelling is a little lacking. Yeah, there's bits where trying to follow this and trying to understand it, it's like it's not. It's only when they finally say, "Hey, people, relax. You're up here temporarily." They finally kind of explain what they did.
Your
But
town
it's
is
not
safe.
obvious from the action. Yeah,
Yep.
It's probably in real life. I mean, in real life, you know what I mean? It's like in actuality, the Justice League would probably beam you up and beam you down 20 miles away, not beam you into a headquarters that doesn't have room for 20,000, 50,000 people. I assume this is just maybe a small 6-area block or something, but this is it is
And so
kind of a yeah. Go ahead.
Here's an example of one of the things I wanted to point out. So, these aliens are invading the town, and he said, and the line is, and it fast happened, fear nailed and choke throated, and watching them make their eat leap, and then fash.
There were a few lines like that. I was like, what?
Where it's just like, okay, yeah. So you read and misunderstood beat poetry. Congratulations, right? Like you are not Kerouac, my friend.
Yeah. Well, he's a kid who's a bad writer. It doesn't mean that Patton's a bad writer.
Okay. Maybe I'm being fair. Maybe that's
I entirely know where you're coming from with that. And if he's a journalist, he should be a better writer than that, explaining what is happening.
That's part of the thing is that that this guy is supposed to have been like a freelancer who had gigs lining up.
Yeah.
And he told his editor to kick rocks because he was sick of writing about things he didn't care about, right? And so he's doing this underground journalism thing where he's selling, he's got like 4,000 readers and he's selling like dollar, fanzines in head shops in Portland, right?
Yeah.
So which is not enough to live on in Portland. Even then it wasn't, right? So it's sort of ridiculous, but like doesn't write like somebody. Like here's this next thing, some Bazooka Joe teleportation fun facts for you. It's like
Bazooka Joe. Bazooka Joe. Did they have fun facts? They had little comics. I don't know.
They had comics. There were some fun facts in the gum.
Okay, then that's what he's referring to. Yeah.
But it's just like oh my goodness, it's so clumsy. And it's like it says the last thing you notice is your thoughts speed up right before it happens, like your brain's on a nonstop meth lab.
Yeah, it's like, is he a meth user that he knows this, or yeah,
or is it just like there's that line? Oh, I forgot to share it. That was this thing talked about this page. But it's just like there's some line in a movie where somebody's like, oh, it's in Community. They're like, oh, this so and so's chip dip is just like crack. And somebody asked them, have you ever taken crack? Because it's nothing like crack.
Yeah.
Now, can anyone explain to me what's happening on page 14?
Well, let's find out.
They're gathering all these creatures together in a pile. Superman and Martian Manhunter are there. And Green Lantern asks, should we fry them? And Batman goes and says negative. Instead, we should. And then he immediately changes his mind and said, no.
Yeah, that's
that. I don't remember it.
I don't know what's going on. And I thought fire was Martian Manhunter's like arch enemy.
Right.
Well, that's probably why they're doing it that way, right? So, but here's one of the whole thing, like this whole sequence. I have to read the sequence, and I know I interrupted the story here, Hutch, but because we're talking about this part of it,
this is good because I don't remember what he's talking about. Okay,
it says teleport tubes, quick is my cooldown. 7 is the only unmasked. Got it. That's team shorthand. They're talking tactics refined to pure to the vanishing point. Action without word balloons, contingencies and blueprints, and deep drilled field maneuvers. It's absorbing, but it's giving up head traffic. I'm getting some of it. And what little us normals here may as well be from another planet. This could be an appetizer event. Although as terse and ominous and confusing as they are, It's clear they're saving the world. Is Batman yellow lighting the reserves? I've pressed 9 and 1. And any thoughts, Martian Manhunter? It's just like, oh my gosh. Like, couldn't you have like talked to like somebody like with SWAT experience or a guy from the teams and or even people on a basketball team? Like, this is not like shorthand in any kind of reasonable sense. It's just nonsense gobbledygook. And okay. Here we go, Twitless. Oh, he's here.
No.
I didn't see you come in. I was on the other screen, man. Sorry.
No problem.
He said this comic is poorly written, as in its use of language made me think I was having a stroke.
I'm not kidding. Early on,
Well, there were moments I wasn't that bad. I just knew it was bad. But like even in the intro, when he's first introducing, like he's getting because they jump in time around in those first 4 pages really badly, and so it's sort of like, oh, here's Sunday where he gets back, and oh, here he is being tied up by with no context, time markers or anything, getting tied up by Wonder Woman, and the caption boxes become his speech balloons, and you have to like read the page 3 times to understand that.
That's just this comic as a whole. In my view, the usage of words is just very it's terrible.
Well,
there's a quote from the very beginning where he uses the phrasing, teleportation is like your brain's a nonstop meth lab.
Yeah,
and
we were just talking about that. Yeah.
Right after that, he started speaking gobbledygook, and I went, oh, his brain's still fried from the teleportation. And then it hit me as the comic continued to go, oh, that's just how Oswalt is writing. So it wasn't clever. It's just so much gibberish, and it's everybody thinks they can write a comic.
Yeah. The problem with where they're doing the shorthand, I don't want to skip past that. That's why I'm jumping in here, just because you're moving down past that. That thing where he says that they're talking in shorthand, that makes sense. That they would have this down to the point that they don't have to give full instructions to each other because they've got, you do, like they just say crowd control instead of having to give detailed instruction to each other. It's just, you're on crowd control and they know what to do. That kind of thing. That would be the team having shorthand, but then they're like, are you calling up the reserves? And they have the most clunky way of asking, and then the response is, I've put in the 9 and the 1, and should I click the 1? It's like, that's not shorthand. And so it's not,
the idea is better.
Piece of 1 page, it's changed that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and then you have like this made up like jargon, right? Like that's a binary share chant, Manhunter.
The idea is better than the execution. So like what Hutch is saying makes sense in terms of like as an idea, but see that this is where it's important to understand that as a comic book storyteller, it's not just, you're not supposed to just have ideas. You're supposed to deliver ideas in a way that an audience will be entertained by in a superhero genre. And so if I'm just watching Superman and Steel and the Justice League speak like a jive to each other, that's not very entertaining, even if that's like technically, like even if there's a way you can imagine that being like, oh, well, they'd speak in code all the time because they're so efficient. But if they're just speaking like jazz freestyle to each other, that's not entertaining to read. It's just silly. It's just silly gibberish, and you're just watching freestyle. And that's again the difference between like having ideas and like reading comic books and then actually being able to deliver on them. This reads like someone's first comic book, which I think it was. So I'm not terribly surprised, but at the same time,
that's funny because I was saying like this could be someone's first DC comic book.
That's what it reads like. Patton clearly like read a bunch of comics, and he wanted to show you that he'd read a bunch of DC, and like that's fine. He's showing his bona fides, but that's like essentially what it was. But as a piece of entertainment that you're supposed to genuinely walk in and get something out of, I feel like it's almost like a masterclass in every beginner like rake you could walk into, like Sideshow Bob.
Right.
So like,
and here's the frustrating thing to me about it, like as far as like lingo goes, like you've got your own, like if they're wanting to go with this in shop lingo, right? Like I don't know if anybody besides me because I think it may be too new for Hutch and too old for the rest of you guys, but for the other guys, there used to be this property called the Bloodhound Gang. Not the Bloodhound Gang. That was a rap group. Anyway, there were child show detectives, and they had like a series of shorts on PBS and a series of like novellas when I was a kid, and like one of the characters was like a ham operator, right? And so like Lingo
Ham
was
radio, ham radio,
ham radio operator, yeah. And so like or at CB radio, right? So like Lingo was a big part of the way the story worked, but they would always like find ways of breaking it down easily in the story, so as you're reading it, it made sense. And so like you know, whether they were incorporating like the lingo in or not, you didn't, as a young reader, you weren't left wondering what the hell's happening. And it was organic within the stories, and so it drew you into this world, right?
So one important thing to add to that, though, is the fact that this is superheroes, right? So at a certain point, you have to decide whether, even if it's practical, to have them speak in a certain amount of code. How entertaining is it to watch my superheroes like talk in gibberish or in code? There's certain sacrifices you have to make in order to deliver an entertaining genre story. So like the furthest I think you could go with that is for them to use code that would be very easily recognizable, that even if it's not super efficient, that like nods to the things we already know about these characters. Like, you know, I've got a, you know, I don't know, like Flash makes a reference to something we all know that he does, you know, Speed Force coming up, you know, like it's just something where it's like, you know, the code is something that we already know as code because we've read all the comics. Like, you know, they do this a lot when they call Superman Big Blue. Like, you know, there are some code names that like we're used to hearing, you know, very often. You could probably do some shorthand with Wonder Woman by calling her Lie Detector. You know, like there's just certain things you could do certain things if you wanted to, but even then, I would hesitate to do it that much because it's like as a reader of someone who's here for an action-packed story in the genre with the genre expectations we have, I would be worried as a writer that my attempt to deliver on that idea would end up reading very dull or boring. Reading ham operator dialogue as dialogue on a visual media, I would hesitate to say it could probably read really dull. It could probably be really boring. And so that's why you have to like understand that what your job here to do is to not just demonstrate that you have ideas or that you've read DC Comics. You're right. Your role here is to deliver in one shot package, a beginning, a middle, and end, that is satisfying. But that's something that you learn as you go when you write like more than one comic. So again, I have to give some slack here, even if I could point out all the mistakes, because it's like, well, I feel like this was, unless I'm mistaken, but has Patton Oswalt written other comics? I feel like this was his only one.
Superhero code names, but is that any shorter than their superhero name?
No, that's entirely right, Donovan. It's just like that's why there's a bit of a paradox in attempting this strategy, because if you were to actually do this, and if you go down that road of this, we need to have tactical verisimilitude. If you need to have tactical verisimilitude, you're not writing a superhero story at that point, because then why does Superman have a cape? Why is this is Cartoonicus will have a field day with this, because like he loves tactical verisimilitude. But at that point, you're just not in the genre anymore.
And like you said, and there are appropriate places for that, right? Like if you're writing a Punisher story, you know, that kind of crosses lines between those things, right? But you also want the giant skull on his chest, or it doesn't work, right? So there's some conceits to the genre, right? You know, but 100%. So anyway, that was one of the things that really bugged me about it. But and they have this setup where to get this back on track of telling the story, there's an alien invasion. The Justice League teleports one town. I don't know why, because these attacks are happening all over the planet, and they're engaged all over the planet. But one town is the satellite. Yeah,
I didn't know that. How did I not pick up on that? I thought it was just in that one town that they had arrived.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was explicitly mentioned, except that not all the heroes are mentioned. I think are shown in that town. But later on, when the bad guy shows up on the satellite with no explanation, thanks Patton. Mm-hmm. He explains that they sampled people from all over. And I'm like,
okay, I took that to be kind of a covert thing. before they
Maybe.
did their invasion, they did some covert spying, which would
Maybe.
be totally within. That's what they did during the invasion crossover. They, did some prep work. So kind of like we did for Iran. We had a lot of prep work before we actually did anything, That's that's how I took it, was that these guys are doing a whole lot of study of Earth before they started their invasion. They're like, yes, this is who we want to invade, because they're ready for the superheroes and all that sort of stuff. So to go on from there, so the kid is stuck up on the satellite, and he kind of comes around a corner, sees Martian Manhunter floating there, and like backs away, but Martian Manhunter's totally aware he's there. And there's a payoff at the end. You don't really see Martian Manhunter for most of the week, but he shows up at the end of the week and explains that he knew Marlis's dad. Back when he was a cop detective, he would go out hanging out with a fireman, and he always admired this fireman because he's up against the one thing that John has no ability to tackle. And the fireman died. And it's really klutzy the way that Patton brings that up earlier and talks about how there was a cop and a fireman who hung out. And it's like, that's your dad. You would never describe this scene that way. It's just, and why would you be in the bar watching them?
It's so amateur. It's such amateurish writing.
Yeah.
The impression I got from this, which is if you want to see what's being attempted here actually executed properly, Kurt Busiek's Astro City is essentially what this is trying to be, which is where you're seeing the superheroes through the lens of a outsider.
Well, and even James Robinson's Starman does some of that, as far as the layout of the stories that happen between the stories kind of thing.
Yeah, but both are far more entertaining. You actually want to read those.
Busiek makes it so that he makes the outsider character, so engaging and compelling that you actually are more interested in him than the superheroes, which means that the superhero action being kind of ancillary doesn't bother you because you're so invested in this character study of who you're following, who's the outsider character. Here, I actually really don't know anything about this kid. So he's really just a lens for the audience to just see the superheroes, but then we just keep on wanting to see more of the superheroes, but we don't get to see more from the superheroes because we're following the kid around. So the story can't really, it ends up being the worst of both worlds as opposed to picking the lane it should be in and
that's what's
working
so
the angle.
I'm sorry, but that's what's one of the things that's so frustrating about the story is we don't know. The kid's a cipher, right?
Yeah.
Because he's got no one to talk to. That's a big part of it. But there's so much of his internal monologue, just all over everywhere, and every little thing he thinks about, and he goes back to talk about his, his career, and he takes breaks and all that kind of stuff. So it's really supposed to draw you into this dude as a dude, right? And flashes back to the first time he saw Aquaman in what would have been a way more interesting story than this comic. And first time the way he met Hawkman after he insulted him in his newspaper, his zine. Which would have been a way more interesting story about how Carter Hall ended up finding out about the thing.
That was a good one panel where he says he actually angered Hawkman. I'm like, that's a good looking Hawkman.
Yeah,
that one page. Yeah, that one panel.
That bit that actually is an Astro City bit essentially, where you have the journalist character pissing off the superheroes and causing a bunch of problems. There's a whole Astro City story that's really really interesting because it takes that concept and dives into it so that you get very drawn into. Oh yeah, if you had a J. Jonah Jameson publication, they'd be getting attacked all the time for slandering villains and heroes. Yeah. And so they nod to that and then just moving on.
Well, and then one of the other frustrating things is if you go down to this bottom panel on the left here, that girl in the background, that waitress, is probably more about her, even though she never says a single word in the entire book. You know more about her motivations than this kid who talks nonstop.
Patton unfortunately puts a lot of words on the page, but doesn't really say anything with them, which is again worst of both worlds. Either be brief and say a lot, or
I have to say, to the contrary, one of the worst pages in this is where he's talking about how he's crammed in with everybody else. And he's like, this reminds me of something. And then he has an entire comic book page that's just a shot of a rock concert and a cutaway of him being at a rock concert. And it's a whole page of that. just to get across the point that
Well,
this is
and
kind of
then-
like being in a rock concert, being smashed in like that.
Well, and the irony about that page of the rock concert, if
It's
you
very
want to
stream
talk
of
about that.
consciousness, actually.
Well, not only is it
Yeah.
very stream of consciousness, right? So I can't find that again here.
Sorry.
if you wrote the entire thing in stream
Mhm.
of consciousness is not easy to read. But there's an artistic vision you could play with there if the entire thing was stream of consciousness, and there'd be something again if he committed to stream of consciousness. But he'll do like cutaway stream of consciousness, and then like cut right back, which is just enough to disorient you, and then you're trying to assemble the rest of the story.
Here it is. So there it is. I was thinking it's further back here, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
$5 for a bottle of water, $8 for a slice of pizza, no bathrooms, and a bunch of rock gods and ex-hippie business slicks making thick bank off their fans and followers. And this man lump of light beer telling us to keep your shirts on, sheesh. And I'm just like, okay, so Patton Oswalt,
Do you know what?
the Hollywood rich guy who got this gig because he's a Hollywood rich guy, is going to scold us about being a Hollywood rich guy? Come off of it, man.
I just want to point out that since I've done a bit of comic book scripting, this reads very much like someone who is this their first comic, and they're thinking about this like a screenplay, and they're like, if you think about him writing the script linearly, he's like, oh, page, because this is like that's like page like 5 or 6 or something. It's like really early,
Yeah.
and so like, but it was so baffling later on to be like, why would you spend an entire page of your page budget on a scene that has nothing to do with the superheroes and nothing to do with the character? It's just this cutaway that does almost nothing, and then you realize that like if you're on page 6, and this is your first comic book, you're learning how to write comic books, and that's literally the 6th page he ever wrote. That's why there's an entire page of that. So by the time he reaches page like 30, and it's like, oh, I only have 48 or whatever he has, and then you start seeing like just how much everything gets compressed later on, and like there are pages and spreads where there's like like over a dozen panels or something. It's just crammed to the gills, like a Where's Waldo picture, and it's like this is what it would be like to like write a script for the first time. You start off putting so many big ideas up front, later on realize that you have to start cramming things because there's a deadline and there's a panel budget. So like it's just interesting because when you start scripting stuff out yourself, you could start to see like into the mindset of like what we got and like why it might have happened that way. That's actually more fascinating.
I don't understand why the editors didn't like cut that, because it doesn't add any flavor to it.
We
It's
have
like, okay,
discussed
yeah.
there are no
Yeah.
editors anymore.
This was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
25 years
ago.
ago.
It was
Yeah,
Didio,
more than
right?
that.
I think it wasn't Didio.
It was the deal, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, Patton, I get it. You went to Coachella once. Thanks.
What year did this come out? What year was it? 90? Was it 2001? 99? What is?
Let me see
Oh,
if I can-
Lex
okay.
Luthor's president, isn't he? So this
Yep,
would be
Lex
early
Luthor's
2000s. Yeah.
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 Let me double check. I thought it might have been 2000 on the dot. Sorry,
Okay.
2003.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be right around the time Didio took over.
So just
but-
before Ted Cord gets killed is what this would be.
Yeah, just before Identity Crisis. Yeah. So this is yeah. This is like the tail end of the good era of DC, and this is right around the time that they were doing a lot of, but they're still doing a lot of that reaching out for celebrities, getting them to do books. Kind of didn't they do the John Cleese's Superman right around that time, which was mostly written by the other guy who works with John Cleese. But anyway, that was also around that same era. But
it would make
ahead.
sense to. It would make sense to me. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
It would make sense to me, even if you're supposed to edit these people when you're working with celebrities. There's probably that that social awkwardness of like I'm correcting a celebrity, and then there's secondly like if the pitch is we got a celebrity to write our comic, you have to like work with the clay you're given. there's only so much you could probably edit. I completely agree. In principle, you should edit it better. On the other hand, I'd understand that in practice, it's probably very difficult to wrangle, and speak out and actually tell the celebrity, actually no.
If you think about it, this is right around the time that they got Brad Meltzer to write the Identity Crisis, right around the same time. So they're clearly reaching out to all these celebrities. In Brad Meltzer's case, they found somebody who is a good, for all the demerits that there are for Identity Crisis, and I could do 5 shows on that. There's problems with Identity Crisis, and a lot of it is editing, and a lot of it is probably forced editing, like that DiDio was doing at the time. But he, in this case, he actually went on to do stuff. He wanted to be a comic book writer, at least for a time. And he was a good writer. When he took over Justice League, I thought that was a good run. But was Patton Oswalt just approached at a con and said, hey, you want to do a book? Just like one shot just to say you did it? Or was he toying with the idea of switching to doing comic books? And this was the first one? We don't know.
Well, this is also.
It doesn't seem like it doesn't. It didn't seem like this was going to go anywhere. So, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank heavens.
I was going to say this is also when Kevin Smith was doing Green Arrow in that same window of time. So
yeah. So,
but the flashback.
I don't think that this was meant to go anywhere. I don't think he was going to. They were going to have him doing a book, unless this was a real hit. Maybe they would have had him do something. I don't know. I remember he's a mostly he doesn't write movies, but he is brought in to do script doctoring on movies right and left. Right. What does that pay? He does stand up. So maybe he was toying with the idea of, he'd like to be a comic book writer. I don't know. I really don't know the backstory of how this came to be.
He also ruins other properties by appearing in them. Like the maybe second worst episode of Parks and Rec was him.
I loved that episode.
I hated it.
I thought it was a great episode.
It is one of the very early, very, very partisan We Hate You episodes of Parks and Rec. There are only a few of those, and that's one of them.
But I liked his rant doing the he's doing a what do you call it, the nonstop talking. He's doing a filibuster. He's filibustering, and he just starts going into how they could bring Marvel and Star Wars together, and he goes on for like 7 minutes about how he thinks the new Star Wars movie should be, and it's much longer than what they put on the show. And the unedited script is really, or the unedited scene is really amazing to watch. There's stuff I like about Patton Oswalt, and there's stuff that I get why people don't like him, but I generally like when he shows up. I loved when he showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a guy who's just gushing about the fact, hey, I get to meet the guys from S.H.I.E.L.D., but at the same time, he was an interesting character who got to turn up again and again.
Does he always play a fanboy? Is that just like his typecast thing? Because even in his cameo as the cabbie in Justice League Action, he does the exact same thing.
His character in King of Queens is that too. Only he's pathetic because of it.
I am just coming to the realization of who this is.
We had to do some references for you, huh? Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe there's people out there listening who don't know who Patton Oswalt is. And
that's true.
That's true. Yeah.
Honestly, I think the best thing when he played Penguin for the College Humor Badman skit, he was playing against type there a bit. It was actually, I think it's one of the few things I
don't think I've seen that, so maybe that would change my opinion somewhat.
He just plays a straight up bad guy. But it's a comedy bit, so it's played for laughs.
He's doing a Christopher Nolan version of the Penguin, which of course there never was one. But it's an interesting clip if you ever need to look it up. It's not bad. I think he's capable of doing good stuff. And for all the people who don't like Patton Oswalt, go watch his appearance the first time he appears on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because he gets killed off and you'll be happy. So, he gets killed off and stuffed in an air vent.
I hated that moment so much.
Anyhow, From the chat, we had a question much ago. Does the Watchtower have a serial wall like Pixar headquarters? Kind of. So this guy goes around and he's hiding out in the vents for a week, and he does go and get water and soap. Suffice to say, I managed to round up a few supplies: bottled water, energy bars, some chewable vitamin C's, a tube of toothpaste, and a package of handy wipes. The couch crasher's friend. I spent the evening watching Bruce Wayne fugitive TV movie. They made Gordon Puerto Rican, but I'm always happy to see Luis Guzman in anything.
Luis Guzman, yeah.
Luis Guzman in anything. So that's almost funny.
Let's instantly date our comic with references to things that people will not remember or recognize in 10 years.
Actually, that's a timeless comment that they made Jim and Gordon a different race.
Yeah,
that one is. Yeah.
I honestly thought
and
he was
he
just
actually
making
is
up an actor's name.
Mm-hmm.
He actually is. He is a Latin in the Lego movie because they got I can't remember who it was to voice him in
I don't remember either, but
to voice Batgirl.
This is at least the second, or maybe it's at least the second time this book specifically says, like, makes pop culture references like an important point. Batman will later say how important he used to keep up with the pop culture lingo so he can keep up with the clues that villains will drop. So he has to stay fresh, yo. And it's just like, oh, cringe.
I actually always wanted to do something with that, with the Riddler making references that only Robin can get, because it's like you have to understand Babylon 5 to get the joke. Something that Batman's never going to, watch an entire binge of a show in order to get references, to understand a puzzle. Although nowadays he would just ask AI and it would, it would know something. But, back then that would have been a funny way for the Riddler to work. Because the Riddler is running out of stuff. It's like, obviously, Batman's read all the good riddle books. You got to come up with something new. It's something that he can't figure out, and it's hard. So,
except like you said, AI, solve this riddle for me.
Yeah. Well, this wasn't a thing back in 2003. So yeah.
What I'm going to say is your idea is good on paper, but what you should do is go and watch. Oh darn! I'm forgetting what I was going to say now. It's what am I comparing this to? Shoot.
This is a while you're thinking about that, this is a King comment from Tankatron.
Mm-hmm. No, I went the other way around, which was when I first heard the Watchtower, I was like, what are the Jehovah's Witnesses making DC Comics references? Like what's going on? I was coming at it from the other direction.
That's amazing. So
yeah.
So what did you think about your?
Okay, I know what it was. Sorry.
Okay.
Go and read if you haven't before. Maybe you have because you're a huge DC fan. But read like the entire first season of what's it called, Teen Titans. And if you aren't completely horrified, then go ahead and write your story.
Which Teen Titans?
Confused.
The original, yeah, Teen Titans.
The original cartoon or the original comic?
No, the original comics. Because time and time again, they are harping on that. Gee, this is real swell music, Batman. It's garbage.
That's true.
Okay, so you mean the original Teen Titans back in the 60s, the Wonder Chick era. Yeah. Patton Oswalt was... I like the thing about the, Bruce Wayne murderer thing or Bruce Wayne fugitive, that there would be like a movie version of it, except I think it would be way too recent for them to have made it into a movie already. But as far as there being a, they take what's going on in the real world and make it into a movie sort of thing, it's kind of cool seeing that. But at the same time, they wouldn't do that with a real case that was very recent. They wouldn't make it into a movie already. But I could see what he's going for. But Patton Oswalt, works in Hollywood, and he's... When the thing about Luis Guzman made me laugh, because being Commissioner Gordon, because Patton Oswalt talked about how he's trying to write in television, and this is where, even though he's like a big, Batman lefty, he always talks about stuff that's like, I don't think you realize how conservative you are in your outlook. You just don't call it that. But he says that he's talking to the writers and they're like, this thing with the Nazi here, could he not be anti-Semitic? Also, 3 of these Klansmen have to be black. That's what it's like having to write in Hollywood. That's one of his stand-up bits that he did on what is it called, Dr. Katz, which is where I first learned of him, was Dr. Katz in the mid-90s. So that's an interesting page, although it's way too busy. It's like it's good art, but it's why is his skin red? I mean, I know they tried to make him Hispanic right around then, but it's kind of a coloring mistake for
yeah, he looks like Sinestro.
If Greg Land was an anime artist.
So so anyway,
but this
is
page,
one of the
this page is specifically the one I had in mind when I said that this is why it's understandable to at least make a guess that Patton was writing this like linearly, because like why would you burn an entire page on like fake Woodstock and then like get to a page where you have to like start putting a lot of superheroes, like, you know what I mean, like just the way the panel budget is being used. And like I said, it is a kind of this is kind of a glorious panel in some ways for what it does accomplish, but it is so freaking busy. Let's put like the entire Justice League and what they do in an entire day, and have them like have essentially mini story arcs even, and do all of that on a single page. And some characters have an entire story arc that happens on a single tier of that page. Batman gets 1 tier, I think, to basically have an entire story arc. Green Lantern has a tier. Flash gets a tier. I think Wonder Woman gets like 1 or 2 panels. Superman gets like
Wonder
1
Woman gets
or
2 panels.
Yeah. Like this
like
is
I said,
insane.
I felt like this was a much bigger story that had to be compressed into a single.
Well, and that's part of it. Is like this isn't the story, right? This is the texture for the story. This is the setting for the story. Right.
No, I think what happened was that the kid had to be made up in order to combine this all into one single story.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. This is this is there just to show how busy these guys are and how nonplussed they are, and that is because that factors into like the overall story of how the Deus Ex Machina to solve the problem at the end that it realizes a problem till then.
To Cartoonicus's point, though, if I may, like, I understand. I agree with you, Reese. I think I do think this story is meant to make this background material, and that was the intention. But let me point out that I think something that Cartoonicus is observing through this, inadvertently, notice that we don't see the kid here. We just see the superheroes, and so this is not background material. If you know what I mean, like it's actually very poorly implemented as background material because it's front and center. It draws our attention to it and it draws us to want to be inside these stories.
Right.
So the way to, like I said, in Astro City, the way that's done is that we typically are so focused on the outsider character that the other elements recede into the background. But here, this is presented as foreground. It's so foregrounded that it's able to give the impression that this was maybe meant to be, as Cartoonicus mentioned, actually a real story that got cut down, because it's so poorly implemented. Here in that scene right there, it actually makes Superman the observer. The placement of like so even the idea that we're supposed to be in the shoes of the kid is actually being violated here. It's just I'm sorry. I don't want to.
Well, Superman's on monitor duty that day.
Sure,
but he's watching everything.
But the framing of this breaks the conceit that we're supposed to be watching the kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the premise of this page is like these are the things that he's seeing from hiding. Because that's on the cradle, and he's sneaking down the hallway to watch all this stuff go down, right?
Right.
And that's what we get with all these other, like, here's the Dr. Fate's calling in, Like, I got to do this thing, get Blue Devil. Blue Devil's calling in. I got to do this thing, go get whatever. You've got these commercial ads and these other kind of things. And there's, cribbing notes from the Dark Knight, right? But that's what's going on here, too, is like we don't find out. And this is one of my problems with the story. And I don't want to go through every page here, obviously, but we have all these far more interesting stories that are happening in the background of the story that we're here. And it's one of these things is just like, any one of these would be a single issue of The Flash or a single issue of Green Lantern. And I'm sitting here or a 6-issue arc in Detective Comics, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then, and why is Wonder Woman at Lilith Fair? Like, what's up with that?
Because she's a woman, and she does stuff like that. To be fair, Wonder Woman does stuff like that. She does feminist stuff in the comics. So,
that's
can I point out that I think he's just trying to come up with little things that are, what would Flash be doing in this shot. Then he does have this Batman case that is running on with, what is it? There's like a number that keeps showing up in a strawberry or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like a case that plays out over the week. He also has that thing with Superman, or not Superman, but with Parasite. Is they reference Parasite, and then they reference him again, like he's on a rampage. He's like leaving Metropolis, and it finally pays off that I always thought that they were on the moon, that he brought them on the moon, but I'm like, how could he be talking on the moon? I realized they're actually in the Arctic, and so he's been trying to get away. He's trying to see. I thought that was the surface of the moon, but it's not. It's the Arctic. But the Parasite is like upset that he's losing himself and his powers or something like that. And
that's Parasite? I thought that was Martian Manhunter.
But then they call him Leech. I think that's a goof. I don't know if the editor said you can't use Parasite, call him Leech or something, or did Patton get that wrong? I don't know, but his name is not Leech. I mean, that's not his real name. And so I don't know. Yeah, his name is Randy Jones or something like that. So
Parasite was purple.
I don't. He was they've gone back and forth on.
Yeah, he changes colors depending on who's drawing him.
Yeah,
what editor is in charge at the time?
Yeah,
I actually think. Hold on, So he's green, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a Static Shock character that shows up in one Static Shock episode that's called Leech.
Oh.
So I think that is that reference.
So not Parasite, just like the Parasite.
But they have been referencing Parasite all throughout, saying that he was leaving. That is Parasite. That is Parasite's design. He's got that thing down the center. That is definitely Parasite. That is how he looked at the time. It's just this is an interesting thing that Parasite is actually talking like a person for once and actually worrying about himself instead of just always going, me hungry. He's actually like, this is one of the better pages aside from that Leech thing, which is baffling. I actually like this because it pays off that he's running away from people because he doesn't want to be near people because he's losing himself in, like, when he absorbs people. I think that's what the conversation is saying. But he's it's kind of like Superman's trying to do something to help him out. At the same time, it's kind of like related to this, where Batman's trying to find a way to defeat the Weather Wizard by actually like employing him to use.
What did you guys think about this page, other than there being entirely too many words on it?
Oh my gosh!
Just conceptually, the idea that Batman, maybe possibly even calling him as Bruce Wayne, is looking to hire the Weather Wizard instead of like defeat him. What do we think about that?
That's fine. I mean, that's a fine Justice League bit. They've done it in the cartoons as well, essentially, where it's like it gives Batman another thing to like add to the team other than just like being like less superpowered. Him leveraging like his money to like diffuse superhero situations is actually like it's a change of pace. I'm totally fine with that. It's just. It makes you want to see the whole story play out and not just watch this kid watch the clip. It's like a clip show, essentially.
It's a clip show.
Yeah. See, I didn't have a problem with that, actually, because once I figured out that was the conceit of it, that made it interesting to like get this little collection of little miniature stories.
See, and here, part of my thing is this is one of like this element. I actually think is like one of the 2, maybe 4 clever things in this story, right? Like the idea that like actually Batman being Batman, finding Weather Wizard's cell phone, and then getting a hold of him and all this, like that actually like is clever, and like a lot of this book is not, but that one is, right? The Hawkman thing is pretty clever. The Superman and Parasite, whatever that is pretty clever. But that's
I'm sorry you have gotten up and left.
No, it's fine.
This guy's beating on the door behind me. Sorry.
So
Sorry.
Another annoying thing that I had, right, is Wednesday we have the weird fight inside of the Watchtower with Killer Croc, Lady Shiva, and the Cheetah on like Wonder Woman's kidnapped them all from Belle Reve, so she could train with them, which like
I kind of liked that. I'll be honest. One of the few things this comic did that was interesting was it. He had a couple interesting ideas. They were almost always executed in ways that I was either saw was subpar, or I was like, wow, it would have been great if that were an actual story. Pick a story, Patton, as opposed to doing every story you ever thought in one comic. That's another thing. It's like, as a first timer, it's like, if I'm going to write one comic, I'm going to put every idea I ever thought in it. And it's like, that's not how storytelling works, or effective storytelling works. Pick one idea and then maybe write a second story. But as ideas go, it's like, oh hey, it gives the, and this might be a reason why it appealed to Hutch, is that this book, one of the few things it did that I actually kind of appreciate, is it fleshed out the Watchtower specifically as not just a place to incidentally have plot elements happen at, but fleshed it out as a place where people do interesting things at. So like, having a Wonder Woman do something unorthodox there, like, do work exchange program fights with villains, is like, that's kind of interesting. And of course you'd want to do it at a secure location like the Watchtower. So I'm like, all right, I'll buy that.
Here's the part that I don't buy.
Sure.
Right? I don't buy that Wonder Woman, who is a foreign dignitary, right, has the arrangement with Belle Reve to just declare that these criminals have time off their sentence. She's not a member of the U.S. government. She has no connection to Task Force X. I don't understand how like that pans out. like that seems to be stretching a little too much.
Superheroes and law never fit.
You're some foreign, diplomat, and you get to just like declare how much time they have off their sentence because you're pleased with the advice they're giving you. And like,
I kind of I figure that she's got an arrangement with them, that she talked up, she called up Johnny Conomos at the, Belle Rev and said, can we work out something where I can work with the real fighters, and at the same time, they could work off a little of their time. And I really like the one where she says, how about instead of time, I get computer time, or internet time, whatever it is. Yeah. That was interesting. I was more bothered by the fact that Cheetah would be willing to do it. I could see all these people who aren't her bad guy, doing this with her.
And like as if you could trust anything they're saying about things, like especially Cheetah, who's got a personal, like,
yeah.
Well, trust is something that she can verify because she's bloody got the lasso.
That's
so like, which is, they kind of reference that a bit when during the fight.
And I like that. It's like, during the fight, why don't you let the lasso brush against the other person? I didn't really get how that would play out because I'm not a fighter. I didn't really get the terminology, what they're talking about, but that you wouldn't be able to fake your punches because you have to be truthful. So you can't like pretend to fake out with a right and do a left because you're hit with the truth thing, I guess, is what he's saying.
Patton Oswalt is not a fighter either, and
no, but he could know the terminology. I'm just not into that kind of stuff, so I don't know. I didn't really get what he was saying.
A couple of Chuck Norris pictures of that.
Sure. What do you think about this scene where Batman is exposing himself to vacuum to see how long to push himself to survive longer in vacuum?
The word freaky comes to mind.
I think I liked everything about it except for the framing of it. Let's frame a shot of someone going into space from his foot and his butt. I'm like, why are we choosing this angle? Like that again.
Well, he's being pulled out towards space, and I mean, it's an interesting perspective shot because it's now. I mean, what else would you have him do? I guess just be strapped to the wall or something.
No. It's the framing. It's literally the mirror inversion. Like if you're trying to impress upon the reader that we're like going into the cold vacuum of space, doing it from the perspective of a shoe that is enclosed does not impart that sense of vastness. You literally have to reverse the camera. So it's just a very poorly thought out page. I don't know if Patton wrote it that way or if the artist was just, I don't know, phoning it in. It just doesn't work.
I mean, and like they had, I mean, like, and to give, you know, the artist the benefit is that like the machinery to do this sort of limited exposure is really complicated, and there is a lot that's going on the page to draw you around the whole thing. And so I think that's one of the issues that you have, is that there's really, to give you the gravity of the machinery doesn't give you the room for all of this closing up and, oh look, he's holding his breath really hard, and also like no amount of training is going to prepare your body for dealing with the vacuum. That's just not how physics work.
You don't actually hold your breath. You have to breathe out everything and just survive for that long. So he has no oxygen. He's just trying to, sorry, this guy's climbing on me. He's trying to make himself last longer because there may be a situation where he needs to survive when the air blows out on the satellite. And he needs to,
that doesn't bother me. No, him pushing himself to his limits is a very Batman thing to do. I just
I'm just saying like that the physics of that is not how it works. What you do is you overcome it with a pressure suit that's built into the bat suit. So when you're when you're in space, you've got something that like has a caliper or some sort of like liquid cowl that covers the bottom and hardens immediately.
Now he's showing his inner superhero nerd.
Yeah.
I like Batman. Batman should be smarter than this.
I think as Batman he would do both. I think he would do both. You'd push yourself to your physical limits because there might be a contingency where you don't have enough time to react, whatever.
But what I'm saying is like the physical limits here aren't limits of strength or endurance. They're how much tissue will tear.
Right. What I'm saying is that you can work on yourself so that your tissues gets a little bit. You might be only giving yourself a couple more seconds, but that's again if in Batman time, those extras the extra 2 seconds of tissue endurance he built up is what allows him to reach the utility belt. Whatever. That's to me. Like I said, I'm more bothered by the fact that the camera is literally focused on his shoe when the shoe has nothing to do with what the visual is supposed to communicate.
Yeah, but I'm more bothered by the fact that he would do. I mean, that's going to be real, actual damage to your body. It's not just like a little temporary thing, He's pushing it right up to the last second too, and it's like I don't know how. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't
you do that.
Yeah, and the thing is like the kind of injuries you're having on something like this is not just the kind of thing you like just shake it off and you're like, okay, like when you tear a muscle,
you're coughing up blood for the next week,
Yeah, you've got internal bleeding and weakened. Your esophagus is going to work right. You're going to have
your lung tissues are bad. Food. Yeah. It's just I find it a little too improbable. It's just that's not a good thing to do. Just to be ready.
Okay. Yeah. So I do want to address the fallout of the party,
Yeah.
right? Because like one of the things that I think Oswalt does well in this story, even though there's all this scattershot random like Gen X nerd puke that I talk about,
Right.
he does pull threads across this week. So he'll talk about Poison Ivy and her plans and the Joker's plans and Lex Luthor doing things. And so these little threads are in there throughout that, right? And then they'll many of these will have payoffs, right?
Yeah.
Jim Tooner, Bane broke Batman's back and it didn't bother him.
I wasn't going to be the one to talk about how already immortal as it is.
To be fair, he was actually rather bothered by that.
He was
for quite some time. He was in a wheelchair.
There was magic that got there was DC magic that saved Batman.
Oh no, it's Batman magic.
No, it actually was his doctor was a metahuman who had healing powers and didn't realize it.
Right.
So that's the whole thing. Is like Batman.
But to be fair, like he was out of action he was out of action long enough that they had to have a replacement Batman for a while.
Yep.
So like they there was payoff to that.
I really like that story. Anyway,
that's not the story we're talking about. Yeah,
that's what we're talking about. So at the party,
that's not the story we're talking about.
At the party, I gotta share this again. Yes, Batman needed magic to fix his back. Basically. At the party, there's this blonde who's in a dress, and all of a sudden it's revealed to be Poison Ivy, and it's part of the ongoing plot with Poison Ivy, right? Mm-hmm. And Poison Ivy is not green in this one, which I felt mixed about. But here's the thing.
I totally forgot.
Yeah, she'd been green after No Man's Land, and then wasn't briefly.
Oh, green skinned. I got
green skin.
Okay.
Yes, green skin. But he's caught by, and this is just a great moment for all the kiddies out there. That she's caught by Plastic Man, which fine, that makes sense. But he says, "Putty brain freak, I ought to lock you in Arkham." I don't know why she would say that, but then he says, "Careful, Ives, or I'll poke you with something." Thanks for that, Patton. Why am I bringing this up there? Because
go ahead.
It's just so stupid. I mean, it's just
as for her presentation, I'm one of the people who really likes Poison Ivy as a temptress, as a and not the entirely green lesbian. I like her as a temptress of men. That's what she's supposed to be. She's supposed to have stockings and and they started the thing where she became an advocate of, or what do you call it up? She's a student of Jason Woodrue, and whatever he did to become plant-like, he also gave her some of it. And I liked it when she was kind of tinted a little bit, like maybe she's got a little bit of a green tint to her, but then they make her full Orion slave girl sometimes, and that's too much. They've gone, I mean, for crying out loud, she's a superheroine now because they can't have her be bad in modern comics. So I actually like this presentation, even if it is against that particular, that's how she is usually portrayed at that particular era, 2003.
Well,
yeah.
Her name is Poison Ivy. You know what I mean? Like, it's in the name. She's supposed to be bad for your skin. Well, she's bad for you.
I mean, Daredevil.
No, Daredevil actually is a reference to people who are just very, like, the term Daredevil literally just means a daring person.
He has a red suit with horns on his head.
What it means, though, whereas Poison Ivy has never had a positive connotation, ever. There's no moment.
Positive. Yeah.
No,
I see. You're talking about the superheroine thing.
Yeah, okay. I'm reinforcing your point.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know what you were. I didn't know what you were commenting about.
I was reinforcing the fact that it's so annoying that they've taken that direction, because it's literally like her entire the entire pitch of her character embodied within her name is the fact that she's like bad for you, and
Yeah.
this, like, on some level she's supposed to be bad for you. The angle that they took was the sort of like noir-esque, I'm bad for men, and
this story hints that story happened, but we don't get to watch that story. We just get to see Plastic Man making an inappropriate comment, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, once again, somebody not getting Plastic Man, and it makes me so angry. And like, and so for this guy to like, and this is one of the things that infuriates me. So this whole comic is a look at me, I'm just like you from my $1 million house in Beverly Hills, and he can't even write Plastic Man right.
Yeah. Plus, they already did the whole thing with Plastic Man posing as a red dress when it was on Big Barda. Mark Waid wrote that in Justice League, so which
was also out of character.
Yeah, yeah, true. It's also out of character. Yes, but it's also, I'm saying it's also been done.
Yeah. Yeah. Plastic Man getting called up by HR. Oh, there's no HR on the moon.
So I'm okay with him being a little like, it wasn't clever. If you know what I mean? If he'd been, a double entendre maybe, but if you're just gonna be like, I don't know, don't move or I'll rape you or whatever,
Yes,
it's just like,
right?
I'm like, I feel like that's out of character.
Yeah, that's
just a little.
Well, and Ivy doesn't give him anything to work with there anyway, because she's just like, I should send you to Arkham. Like, what?
Yeah,
what?
I know.
Well,
Yeah,
he also could have said something like, I'll hit you with the weed killer.
No, that's what I'm saying. A clever double entendre, something clever other than just. I don't know. I just.
So anyway, basically the week goes along, and because let's skip to the end, because there's all sorts of these other little moments that are basically the same kind of thing, where it's just stuff. Well, finally, this kid has his. Does his dream even matter?
No.
Okay. So, skipping entirely to the end, there is Mount.
Patton decides to introduce an entire new cast of characters in Act 3 of a one-shot book.
Yes.
It's just, again, like I said, like Sideshow Bob, every single beginner amateur mistake. It's just like, introduce new characters, introduce them in the last, 10 pages?
Well,
an entire cast of characters.
And in fairness, there were some threads in the cases the Justice League were working on, right? There's supposed to be, and in the news articles and in the news broadcast this kids watches from the vents, there are these little hints that are in there, but they're super obscure and they're not ever tied together. And but then you have this moment, right, where oh my goodness, we can see this from space.
Right.
How did that sneak up on them?
Well, and especially how did they sneak up on it when the Flash, when Martian Manhunter pays attention to the world psychically. That's one of those things that has been established. And this is a really good page. A really good panel. I like this, the heroic posture, but it's in such a stupid book. And then you don't talk about Superman's cape. So we all know that Patton Oswalt once listened to Jim Croce on his parents' hi-fi. God, I can't stand this.
I'm sorry.
Superman's cape, and then we get back to this thing from page 2 where he's being tied up and being threatened to be tortured by Batman, right?
Okay,
and
what the heck does he say here?
He's just babbling. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter.
And
he's going on about the dream he had and how he realizes because his brain somehow is syncing with the villain's plot, and that gets sort of kind of revealed.
So why does he say it's a cookbook?
Why does Plaza say it's a cookbook?
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all.
Okay,
that's a Twilight Zone reference.
Yeah, it's the How to Serve Man. It's a cookbook, and it doesn't mean anything. That's just half of the stuff that Plaza says in this book are just are not even non sequiturs. They're just random comments, and
Well, it's a reference to I know what the aliens' plans are, and that's what Plastic Man is riffing off. Oh my gosh, it's a cookbook. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, that's
So-
obscure.
It's not. Not if you're a Generation Xer. We've all
I
seen
didn't
that
pick up on
episode.
that part of it. Yeah. I mean, I've heard the joke before, but
Yeah.
how to
I
serve
mean,
man.
if you've you've seen you've seen the Naked Gun movies, if nothing else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, then the Justice League, all the superpowered ones jump to Earth to fight against, and then who knows what. And then this guy shows up directly from the Jersey Shore. Which, it's like what? Wait.
I have chosen this form because it is one you will like. I'm sure that's what he's doing.
I got confused.
Use the
again.
form of your
First I
destroyer,
thought that
and
the
it's
kid had turned out to be an alien, and that he was revealing his true form here.
oh, I wish that was what was going on. That would have made it so much more interesting if the kid had been some sort of plant and not realized it, and had been the bad guy all along. But yeah, this guy shows up for some reason and doesn't ever explain how. And I don't know if this big monster behind him is supposed to be what he really is, and whatever. I don't even understand. But he comes out as the exposition man to explain to Batman, because Batman can't do anything about the real master plan. And the real thing the book has been leading up to is Shia LaBeouf.
So this
will
is
not divide us.
this is that page you're talking about where they introduce a whole new supervillain team, right?
On a 2-page spread. Yeah.
On a 2-page, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I point out the clever use of Plastic Man to separate the panels?
Yes.
Yeah,
Very
that's
clever, yeah. That's
That
good.
was one of the few clever things in here. And I don't know who is supposed to be who, but this guy is the Feast, is the Jersey Shore kid, who turns out to be like millennia old. These are all champions of a great intergalactic supervillain battle that has decimated entire star systems, has destroyed races, has collapsed galaxies in on itself. These guys are supposed to be the worst, and here's the thing about this that is so dumb.
Because the time to introduce all of this is in the third final act after you've already done 100 other things, and you're.
That's not even the dumbest thing, right? This is the Justice League. They have fought against time. They have held back Ragnarok. These guys, Plastic Man is immortal.
No, that doesn't bug me because you're selling. It's a threat.
You're missing. I haven't gotten to the part that is crazy about all this yet. Is that nobody in any of these people who have gone to Oa, they've been to New Genesis. Like nobody has ever heard of this Feast guy and the fact that they've destroyed huge amounts of the universe, right? All of these little like warring factions that he introduces here. Like, nobody's heard of this. Like, like how could that be such a big secret when like some of these people have talked to God? I'm just
again. That doesn't bother me as much considering like the genre constraints. I just structurally speaking, it's so tacked on that you don't feel you don't feel the impact of it because it's like.
And I guess that's actually part of what I'm talking about, right? Like it's such a huge world building thing that like nobody can know about, and it's just like, but yet like we're supposed to believe that the stakes are super high,
right?
And that these guys the Justice League have been separated, so they can't do anything about it, and then they have like the other thing about this page that is super frustrating. This one and the next one. Is they're talking about how like they scoped out the Earth because it was a carbon-based life form with the yellow sun, so it'd be a great place for them to have this big battle royale that they've been hired this guy to set up. And then we meet all of these different characters. but it's laid out in such a way that like half of them, I don't know who's supposed to be who, and like why they're interested in these different characters and who's attacking these guys that are attacking Plaz. Like it's not explained super well why these Aztec gods are trying to tear apart Plastic Man.
Yeah.
But,
As much as I like Pat Gleason, I have to say this is very hard to follow, and I know he's trying to follow a script that is, the way it's composing these pages and putting all these balloons, and he's trying to make it make sense. It's probably a lot to tackle. Panel 1, an entire galaxy-ending battle. Panel 2, the revolution in hell. Panel 3,
right?
Nuclear explosion.
Yeah. Well, and I mean,
it's just too much.
Listen to some of these names. These are actually not unclever names. You've got the wish gun facing off against the Green Lantern. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, if I knew what her powers were.
Right. Well, I mean, she's got a party girl with stolen technology, whatever that's supposed to mean. Although here it says a streak of sadism matched only by her monstrous ennui, which that's kind of a fun thing to say, but nothing. She's never drawn with anything approaching ennui.
Right.
I don't even know what that
Yeah.
is.
It's just
This really needs
words thrown at.
This really needs an entire chapter to
Right.
actually let us see this play out. And even
Or
if it
even
was
talk
given,
to these people.
even if each one got a whole page, it would be crammed. If each one of these got a whole page to do that,
Right.
it'd still be crammed.
It's
Yeah.
almost as if you were going to take 6 months to do this.
Mhm.
Again, you're thinking too logically. This was always meant to be this way. That's the way
Oh,
it
yeah.
should have been planned.
Yeah.
I found that
Yeah, this is absolutely part of the plan, because like the way these are written are written like when you are explaining your D&D party to your mom. Right? like that's what this is written at, and that's exactly the kind of person that Patton Oswalt is he's trying to inflict his nerddom on you, and he's trying to out nerd you, and that's insulting.
Yeah. He does that on Reno 911, right? That he plays
I've never seen that show.
He plays a D&D nerd all the time. Who get the cops get called out, and they're having a battle because he got hit with a +3 axe, and the other guy did not fall down like he should, and so they called the cops. That's the kind of stuff that Patton would do when he's on Reno 911.
It reads,
so, yes.
It reads as someone who's incredibly insecure.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
But yeah, and you're not wrong. But I want to talk about like some of these names without going into it. Just the Winter Guests, Glimpse, the Doom Mathematic. Like those sound like they could be really cool ideas. Like why aren't I reading those comics like about like the details of all of these? And like and it's so close to being over. This comic is so close to being over now. And so here we have.
Can I say something? When we were talking about how the whole week is kind of like he's just allowed to be running around on there, and then it's only at the end that it's revealed that Martian Manhunter knew he's there the whole time. But then why let him do it? Is just because he's fond of the kid, because he knew that he's an orphan or he lost his dad or whatever. And it's an interesting bit, but it doesn't quite explain why John would let him do that. I was thinking, what if when he was attacked and they beamed him up there, what if they plotted, it would be more interesting if this was, it would explain it all, that he's actually got like an alien on his back and he doesn't even know about it. And that's why he's connected with these guys at the end, and they've been keeping him there like a petri dish because they need him to put him in touch with, something that would make this all tie together and pay off and explain why he brings in this thing at the end.
That's a really fun idea.
I read this quickly. I thought that's the angle they were taking, that the reason he was invisible, because they make some reference to that, like there's new villains that are being fought, and people are getting, like, people are dying less, like people.
Yeah, there's a boy band that becomes superheroes, and like, why aren't I reading that book?
Well, the implication later on was that this guy, the robots, aliens, the bio machines like impacted humanity, and some people got some superpowers because of it. And so from that, I was like, oh, the reason why this kid is sneaking around undetected is that he's been impacted. One of those bio aliens like got to this kid, and that's why he's able to just like he got some sort of invisibility power. And so my brain just defaulted to this idea that like he has some special ability. That's why he can walk around unobserved. And if he has that sort of special ability, storytelling like 101 would tell you that he'd be able to sneak in and save the Justice League after they get captured by disabling the machine. Like this, it writes itself.
Yeah.
And yet somehow Patton walks into the rake again, and just it goes, oh, he has a dream, and they win. It's just I just mind-boggling incompetence. Because like he had all the ingredients for a cake, and then like dropped the cake on the floor without even baking it, because it was like he had the pieces. It's right there. Just have the kid be invisible, which is the whole point of the story, and then have him save the day by being invisible, and then you can work in him being an invisible person into his character arc. And
then you've got this character, the invisible reporter, the invisible punk rock reporter, who then suddenly can be in stuff and be interesting, right? And like, I don't think he wrote him interestingly, but that concept could be used by another writer in a really fun way, right?
And the idea of him being like invisible and no one pays attention to him, and that's then
it's
thematic.
There was a Geist was one of the New Blood heroes, and I wrote a really fun fan fiction with Geist trying to have a normal life after he doesn't want to be a superhero anymore. And just playing with that in the DC universe about something like that would be really fun, and that could even make a really good like backup feature where you've got the invisible reporter, or he disappears when people when he or whatever the story is.
I'm just saying like it was very like the story's own setup ends up it because like I'm not even like doing like the fan fiction rewrite in my head. Like these were the pieces that Patton set up himself that that makes sense with the story he wrote. And he didn't do the natural thing that his own story set up. That's my point.
It was very clear that Batman was the star in this story for him.
Was supposed to be it's supposed to be Martian Manhunter, so even then I think it falls flat on its face. The whole thing was basically like Patton Oswalt saying, actually my favorite character is like Martian Manhunter. So
actually what he says is that Batman is Elvis and Martian Manhunter is Bob Dylan. Isn't that or something like that?
If Superman is Elvis, Martian Manhunter is Bob Dylan.
Yeah, another music reference.
Yep. My parents had a hi-fi. Yep. Which is cool. I mean, hi-fis are cool. I'm not trying to say they're not, but anyway, one of the point on this page, Jim says, I don't like the coloring on this page. It's mud. And part of the reason, there is a reason that the coloring is mud, is that this is supposed to be Feast explaining the big plan, because the battle royale for Earth is only part of the big plan. The bigger plan is that these aren't the only aliens that want to slaughter entire populations. And Earth is genetically malleable enough that that's why there's so many superpower people here. So once we destroy the Justice League, we're going to turn the Earth into a factory to generate beings that can be hunted forever.
So this was not actually happening while he was saying it.
Right. Exactly.
I thought this had suddenly become, what was that movie, The End of Evangelion? Like, the entire world is being liquefied.
I think that's what the villain's plan is, but clearly it doesn't happen.
Right.
Well, no, I got the impression that they undid it at the end, because they were talking about something about an antidote. Yeah,
the antidote is to unsuperfy the planet, because they've already been processing the stuff.
That's what they were talking about.
They put the stuff in the atmosphere, and that's why all these superpowers are showing up, and the Backstreet Boys are superheroes now. Why is that happening? Because this stuff's been pumped in the atmosphere for the last week.
I thought they were just saying they were unliquefying people.
Right. So what they were doing is they're actually taking care of all of that. So the massive explosion's over the top, but yes. So, and then we have this, and this is there's a fight. Batman he's got a little bomb that he sends over there and sends the guy flying, and they start fighting. And I'm going to jump to this page. There's all of these guys that are fighting the Justice League, and it looks like the Justice League are losing, and the narrative makes it sound like it is. And then all of a sudden, like, Batman has got the guy, the Feast guy on the ropes, and then the Justice League shows up, right? they single-handedly, I mean, each of them defeated their bad guys. They worked together, and they won. You know, these giant, these monstrous villains from before time who have been slaughtering universes. 6 guys and their buddies kicked him in the teeth.
Yeah.
By the way,
nobody's costume is torn. You guys don't look out of breath. They're not haggard at all. No,
right.
These guys beat the whole universe.
This was the moment that I came up with that idea, that I thought that this might have been something bigger, is because how quickly we seem to be rushing through the details of the conclusion. Barely a word about the antidote, barely a word about how he took him down. And then I realized the page before, he literally says, if this were a comic book, it would have run 20 issues and taken all summer. But it takes minutes.
Let's read that just to really appreciate that.
Hey.
Something crucial about Firestorm and someone or something calling Oracle, scrambling the spectator fleet, sending them to fleeing into space. If this were a comic book, it would have run 20 issues and taken all summer, but it takes minutes. The world is saved, and it's too big and fast to be taken in. And of course, Batman's enemies always seem to get it the worst. Let's just say there's an immense explosion, and the others reappeared. Batman was doing something with a ballpoint pen, and he was, I can't. Feast cooperated. He cooperated, okay? I heard the ballpoint pen click, and the Flash was gone and back in an eye blink. Something to do with teleporting the fluid into the troposphere.
It's like, whether or not this was supposed to be more than one issue, they're totally having to rush here. That much I'm convinced.
He's lampshading it, which is a way, a beginner, by the way, an amateur way of covering up your own writing mistake.
He's running out of room, and he only has a few pages left.
Right, so he's acknowledging it, and he thinks that's enough to cover the mistake, which is a beginner mistake.
And once again, I mean, it's done within the context of this is this guy's process. Like he's going to be writing all of this down for the next issue of Save Us or whatever. His experience a week on the Justice League, and so that's what we're reading in the margins, right? And that's almost clever, right? If it wasn't such terrible prose, it would just it's. Is there a purple that's purplier than purple?
What
did I at 17 write this comic?
I don't know. Are you putting down all 17-year-olds?
No, just me. Anyway, so here's the big conversation between this kid and Batman. They're still out there, a galaxy, he said, maybe another universe or dimension of those things. This changes everything, doesn't it? Our planet's got a Goldilocks orbit, not too hot, not too cold. Prime real estate. It's the price we pay. But they'll be back. And we'll be ready. Justice is always ready. And I don't know if I hate that because it's terrible or if it's because contextually it sounds like something that should be really cool, but here it doesn't feel cool, right?
I think the problem. I think it's fine.
Glazed over it,
but I think it's fine in a story that earned it. And the problem.
See, that's kind of what I was torn on. Like here, it feels really like
tacked on,
cheap, right? But like I can imagine a story where Justice is always ready would be awesome. right?
Yeah, if it earned it.
Yeah. Like Batman shows up and like interrupts like a bank robbery after another bank robbery, right? And like, you know, the Joker and the Clue Master are you know, had one robbery that was actually a distraction for the real robbery, and like they thought Batman had fallen down a crevasse or something, and you know he had a backup plan, you know, that kind of a thing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, it's a story about the Justice League, right? It makes sense that they're summing it up, you know, in a way to sum up the entire DC universe.
No, that's what
There's always a fight.
I agree. I think the problem is that it what Reese is pointing out, and I do agree with, is you have to earn your endings, or else they feel hollow. If it's and the problem is that this story is so freaking discombobulated.
Well, and that's a perfect comment to tie into what Jim Tooner just says. I think you could arrange the pages here in any order, and the story would make equal sense.
True.
I'm not. By the way, I'm not just trying to rain on people's parades here. Like I go into like I like superhero content. It's just, you know, I'm not here just to complain. It's just Patton Oswalt is very clearly it's baby's first story, and it reads like that. And it reads like someone who really loves his action figure toys and really wants to show you that he knows a lot of things about all these action figure toys, and he's watched all the Saturday morning cartoons about all the cool action figures that he owns, and he had an opportunity to just show them all to you and parade them all and show you how much he knows about all the cool toys and all the Saturday morning cartoons he watched. And like, it's not even super like I don't even really hold that against him. It's if you get a celebrity to write a comic. I will say this, and this is something I can unequivocally say as a point of praise. At least in this instance, they got someone who did in fact own all the action figures and watch all the cartoons. Because what they would do in about 10 years after this is they would start looking for people who had never watched the cartoons, who had never bought the toys, and who had actively hated those things, and then started giving them those celebrities and those people the full runs of these characters.
Oh, it was less than 10 years. In fact, it had already started at this point. But yeah. That being said, and the other thing, and I do want to point out that I do want to applaud there in the nonsense that is this story. There are lots of little plot threads that are woven through it. And even though I don't think the payoff was done well, there is a payoff for every plot thread in this, right?
Sure.
Like if there had been a strong editorial process, if somebody had really worked with him on paring out the stuff that didn't need to be there, this could have been a really fun story, because there are a lot of little things that get mentioned in the first few pages that he does pay off at the end. Even the chewing gum thing, right, actually makes sense within the context of it. Is it hackneyed and cheesy? Yes. Does that mean it's not fun? No. It could have been really fun if we'd had, you know, if it'd been earned. If we'd had the situation where this guy had a what's it called? Bloodlines type of event where he ends up taking some of the aliens' power and he's sneaking around the thing on his own, and he helps to save the day, other than just happening to be there in the way when a thing happens.
Ultimately, Cartoonicus is correct. If you wanted to do a week on the Watchtower, you needed to have 7 issues. Each issue was a day. That's the pitch. That's the pitch in a nutshell. That's what needed to happen. A week on the Watchtower is 7 days. Each day is Monday through Sunday, and issue 7 is your big payoff. Clearly there's enough material here to make that work. Cramming it into one shot was a brain dead idea.
that I could see this working much better if given the proper amount of space. This is almost like when I tried to do when I tried to do 8-pager stories or 12-pager stories when I was self-publishing, it's like I'm trying to do way too much for the limited amount of time that I have. Every panel is like doing too much. And it's like, if only somebody was paying me to fill 22 pages, then I could space it out properly. But I kind of get the same feeling here, which is weird because I don't think he has to pay for them, but he really is cramming way too much into every single page, except for when he wastes a page on something. And I'm really surprised at how little humor there is in this. And I don't mean any slam on like he tried to make a joke and it's not funny. I mean, considering it is Patton Oswalt, he really doesn't push for many jokes here and there.
I gotta admit, I did laugh at that one line at the end when he says, "This is my part."
This is my what?
He says, "This is the part I play."
Oh yeah, when he finally gets to say, "You're lucky the Sea King isn't here." Yeah, that was cool. It would almost be better if he didn't say, "And here's my line." It's like,
yeah, right.
Yeah,
but
that's what I mean.
I like the joke that he's like, "Here's my big role."
Yeah, I do think when I think about this book, it's like I know it's not great. I still get a little smile that there's in the same way, like when, I don't like Kevin Smith's writing of comic books, but I feel like how cool is it that this guy was a comic book fan and he sold his comic collection to make a small film and he got to be somebody because of it, and he's like my age and he actually went somewhere and did something, and isn't that cool? It's kind of the same thing with Patton Oswalt. It's like he's a guy who was famous for being a geek in a most comedians are not geeks. They are any number of other characters, but that's usually not the thing. He's a big old nerd and he's proud of it, and he actually got to write a comic book, and it's like I don't know, I still think that's kind of cool. And this isn't the worst thing in the world. It has its moments that are really good. I still like the fact that it doesn't work fully, but I still like the fact that Martian Manhunter had a fireman friend. That's kind of an interesting backstory I'd kind of like to know more about,
Yeah, once again, this story has lots and lots of things that aren't in the story that would have been better stories than this story.
Yeah.
And if to give him some flowers, right? Honestly, like that's kind of a cool thing. That's kind of a neat point where if you can actually say, as much as I didn't like this, there's lots of really good things about this. Why didn't you make that story?
Yeah. If only there'd been 4 pages devoted to this, to pay off the whole thing about his he's trying to do it in just a couple panels where he just drops it like, oh yeah, this guy was my friend and he died and that's his son. And it's like, get there over a few pages of, you know what I mean? The thing is frustrating. The thing that's frustrating about this is there's a huge sequence. It's like 2 pages talking about how cool this guy thinks Martian Manhunter is. And then he has the heart-to-heart talk with Batman, not Martian Manhunter.
Yeah,
and it's like...
Well, can someone explain why... This is supposed to be him as a kid, right? His father he failed to save. So he's clearly got... It seems like they're putting it up to have him have a lifelong vendetta against him. Why would he be his favorite?
Well, because he didn't know it was Martian Manhunter.
He doesn't know that's Martian Manhunter. Yeah.
Oh, he never realized.
Because he did the shape shifting.
The kid still, and Marlis, whatever it is, that's not a real name. That's that he still doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
So,
John's been keeping an eye on him over the years, and was for some reason let him wander around the headquarters. And that's the problem. It's the for some reason thing. I wish there was more motivation. Maybe, or just a chance to kind of see what's happened to him over time.
For all the threads that for all the threads that have interesting mini payoffs, the ones that matter the most, which is the ones that deal with your main protagonist and his connection to a central character in the Justice League, is the most poorly fleshed out, and in certain cases, as Hutch says, has just a I don't know, just because so the story can happen, as its justification. So it's I guess
story can happen.
Yeah,
we're stealing a lot of stuff from the pitch meeting channel.
Yeah. So, if this were the worst that it got for superhero storytelling, it's so quaint to be like, if this is the worst that it got, you could still, as Hutch said, you could still be like, well, at least someone who likes the comics got a chance to write them. It's so quaint to realize that we had so much further to go and so much further to fall. So much further to fall in terms of, like I said, people who were just going to take chainsaws to, like, all of the things that we liked on purpose, not even unintentionally. So just be like, hey, you like this? I'm going to cut it into pieces and then dance on the grave and piss on it and laugh at you. It's like, great. So it's such a quaint 2000s thing where a bad story is actually there's almost a nostalgia for the bad stories of the 2000s, because they were bad, but they were also like genuinely trying to still entertain you, and the social justice is just around the corner, where it's like, actually, we're not going to try and entertain you at all. So it's so interesting it's always so interesting to look back on some of these 2000s bad storytelling artifacts, because you still have to point out how they're messy and sloppy, but at the same time, you can't hate them in the same way that stuff that will come afterwards is so hateable, because it hates you.
Right.
Like Patton Oswalt does not. Patton Oswalt clearly doesn't hate you as a superhero enjoyer. He wants. If anything, Patton is trying too hard. He's try-harding because he wants to be one of you, because I'm a nerd and I watched all the Saturday morning cartoons. I'm just like you guys. So he's trying too hard. It's like, hey, buddy, don't try as hard. Just try enough to do one story, and you don't have to cram everything you ever thought into just one.
Which, once again, I want to take the time to point out the very last page on here. The payoff, right? I said that every thread gets dealt with, and even his going on about the cute waitress. We have the cute waitress gives him. He's thinking about his dad. She comes over. It's his ticket, and it's an invite to go out to the bar with her to Powell's. Right? How sweet that she's taken the first step for this little nerd kid. And
it just drops in his lap. He doesn't earn it in any way.
Yeah, well,
this isn't like Samwise. This isn't like Samwise suddenly finding the strength to go ask because he's.
Well, no, yeah, I will say that the thing about it is that like this girl has, like I said, she's more developed than he is as far as
she has more agency.
she has more agency in the story, and like you see in the beginning of the story, she goes up and approaches him, and then he's like, "Oh, I can't even talk to this girl," and like when he's telling the story about Hawkman, and he's got one of his Hawkman's pinions that he's showing off at the coffee shop, she's there and engaged in what's going on. I mean, like, she has way more agency in the story than he does, which once again is a reflection on Patton Oswalt's person. But like I was saying, that threads all through the book, and it pays off, right?
Yeah.
With this far more developed character who doesn't say two words in the entire thing. And it's just indicative that, like, while it's mockable on the one hand because it shows that that the main character is sort of a beta. It also is a situation. It's not a gamma. It also I don't even believe in that theory, by the way. It's just convenient for.
Neither
shorthand.
does the person who invented it.
Yeah, I know.
Alpha theory is not. It isn't actually a thing. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
But with it, as a shorthand. But it is a thing that like there are storytelling chops that he's got, right? Like the fact that, like, every gun except the why is he on the thing, on the moon base to begin with, like but every gun on that mantle got fired. You know? Not all of them are aimed well, but all of them got fired.
Right.
And I do want to give props for that, even if like that the scatter shot of it all made this really uncomfortable to read.
Do we need to clarify for the audience that we're talking about Chekhov's gun there?
I don't think so.
In fact, you probably just made it worse by clarifying it.
You know, I do have to. I do have
Hey,
to say,
look
at
who
least
joined us.
Patton isn't writing a book where he's Starfire's son. You know,
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah,
he hasn't,
exactly.
he hasn't done that.
If this is a self-insert, it's very much a innocuous one where he's just a random bystander who basically just gets to watch the heroes he likes.
Yeah.
It's not a self-insert that's like, let me change established lore and make it all about me. If anything, this kid, like I said, has less agency than most. Like I said, that's even assuming that there is a self-insert aspect.
Well, and it's like this kid is the opposite of a Mary Sue.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And once again, I mean, like that's such a when you're dealing with what's essentially a fan project, it's a super convenient temptation to fall into that.
Super.
Well, I think it's also representative of the comedic culture of the time too, right? During that time, most stand-up comedy was like self-degrading. Like you'd go up on stage and you make fun of yourself for a lot of it. There was a ton of comics doing that.
Yeah.
Clearly, we're discussing Murphy's gun, which dictates that a gun will misfire when it is least convenient.
I will say that it's I like.
Sorry,
You're good. I really liked Hutch's observation, and that's kind of what I was kind of getting at when I said that, you know, if you approach this from like a writing perspective, you can start to see, oh, that's what might have happened, that delivered like early on pages of content that did nothing. And what I wanted to say is that I think it's another thing that encourages us to do more creative works of our own. It informs your criticism, and it also informs your ability to craft more stories. The key to getting better at storytelling is to just tell more stories, because the first dozen or so that you tell are going to be crap, and you can't avoid that. So the only way to get past it is just to do more of it, because it doesn't matter if you've got a multinational corporation assisting you. Your first story is still going to be your first story. And even though comics is very accessible, I think there's sometimes people look down on comics and think, oh, well, that's just easy. That's just comic books. I can do that in my sleep. And this is what happens if you do that. And it can be a jumbled mess. So even if it's a lovable one in some respects. So again, as a point of encouragement and inspiration, go out and make more stories. Go and do a dozen, do 100, because that's how you learn how to work.
Grind those experience points.
Yeah. And this is one of the best things I ever did, was make myself do a bunch of 4-page Omega Girl stories, because I had to learn, as Hutch mentioned, I had to learn how to work with those constraints, because I was paying for every single page, and learning how to work with those constraints taught me so much about, panel budget, beginning, middles, and ends, how much story you can cram into a single narrative, how much you should, and those are types of lessons that you can't just obviously cram on your first try. So,
but ironically, I was talking about this exact same thing on Rick Piper's channel earlier today.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
What did you
and
say
that's
there?
one of the things too. Is I think
It was basically what Twitless just said about, like, because I was talking about how people should start with shorts specifically, because you just don't have any experience yet. You don't even, when you first start, you think you have like such a good idea, but you don't have the experience or the capacity to know what your best idea is going to be. Like that's something that will also come with experience. So you just need to come up with an idea, set yourself like a short page limit. I was starting with like 8-page shorts early on, but like anything that fits those printing dimensions or like numbers 4, 8.
Rules of 4.
Keep it probably under 16. That's maybe the highest limit, and even that's pushing it. Even give yourself a word limit sometimes too. You can't put too much dialogue on the page. Try to find some other ways of telling the same thing. Just creative constraints to make you flex those muscles.
Well, and that's one of the things too. Like I want to come back with Twitless. You were talking about how you were having to pay for every page, and so this was a great learning curve for that.
Oh yeah.
I was actually, just before you mentioned that, I was going to bring up that when we started with Forces, we were drawing it all, both of us. Chris was doing pencils, I was doing inks, and so anything we put in the script had to go on the paper, and so we were like. That becomes a different type of economy and a different type of budgeting, right?
Yeah.
This every extraneous detail is time away from the family, time away from the kids.
I gotta do
away
it
from the household chores, and
Right.
so it's different, but it's similar, and I think that's one of those other learning things.
But what's so cool is that when you look at this, you can see how, because you've gone through those, because all of us have gone through those steps. When you start to look at what Patton is doing in his first attempt, it's like, oh, I can see how he's walking these first steps himself, because he has to go. We all have to start somewhere, and we all have to start with those initial ideas, and you could just see him working his way through them. And I think he's probably, if he did it linearly, which in some cases it looks like at least parts of it, it looks like he did some of it that way. The writing, it would be interesting to reread this and see if he evolves from the beginning to the end. I wonder if, because the opening is so rough, and I think it does get a little cleaner towards the end, and that would actually make a lot of sense if this is his first comic. So there's that other perspective that's very, very interesting to read this through. Not just its own story, its own merits objectively as a piece of DC fiction, but through the lens of, okay, I understand this is someone's first attempt at writing a story like this. Seeing it through the creative lens from the writing perspective, I think that's a really fascinating way of looking at it.
Yes. Well, guys, I think we've beaten this horse entirely to death. I want to thank you so much for coming on, everybody. Next week, something different. We haven't discussed it at all. We have no ideas. It's totally fun.
Can I say one last thing about Patton Oswalt?
Please
Can I say one thing just before we go? Can I just say, given that I'm going to talk, I'm trying to do more plugs of our show on my various, socials, just in case I tag Patton Oswalt and he happens to come here and see this. I do think he's very funny. I do. I like a lot of his stand up and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's one of those, how people say yeah, if people say, who would you like to have dinner with? And you're supposed to say Jesus and Gandhi. And, it would be like Ben Stiller, Patton Oswalt, and Seth Green. And then I realized, you're supposed to go for the big ones. I could probably go to a Comic-Con and make that happen. So if I hit the right Comic-Con. But I think it would be so much fun. As long as you didn't talk about politics or religion, it'd be fun to just say, did you guys ever see, that show on Saturday morning where the moon gets ripped apart and everybody on Earth dies, and then there's a barbarian in the future with a sun sword, and it'd be fun to talk about stuff like Saturday morning cartoons that we've all seen. That would be fun. But I don't know. Aside from that, I understand everybody has their different opinions about him, and yeah, if you get him talking various issues, he's tough to take. But I don't know. I've enjoyed his stuff and a lot of things, but I point out, I really like that because he was in it, and they're like, he was in it. I hated that. Like you with Parks and Rec. So
yep.
Yeah. Sorry, I just had to say that.
It's fine.
I did not hate this. I of course, it's one of those things kind of like Heckler that if you really go back and look at it, it's like, okay, I can see how this kind of sucks. Yeah.
Well, you were the one who recommended this one, right? So.
Yep.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So.
not the worst thing in the world. It's not the best, and even when it's not great, it's interesting. So yeah,
Yes,
I still
I
think
like-
that awesome.
At least it's
There's
not
some
boring.
awesome 2-pagers on here. So yeah,
there were some awesome 2-pagers, and you know,
Mhm.
it also got. So I do appreciate the inferior 5 showing up in that big party
Yeah.
scene. They're some of my faves. So next week, more comics, and until then, this is Reese for the whole gang. We're signing off of Monitor Duty. You guys have a great week, and get out there, read some more comics.